Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Hope everyone is okay tonight. I went to see the wife. It's our anniversary, or for at least it was 30 minutes ago and maybe 10 seconds. And she was medicated. She had taken Benadryl, at which point she didn't want to be bothered. So I said, I am going to go and do the news, but I'm not going to do the news. I'm actually going to do a 420. So I'm going to say blaze one if you got one, and let's have some fun. And good speakers and everything else is great. So let's have a 420. Yeah. So blaze one if you got one. I had this interesting thought in another video, and I wanted to expound upon the interesting thought that I had on the other video. That interesting thought, let's start here. So as you guys remember, yeah, I'm trying to think of where to start with this because I need to develop it in a particular way. All right, so everyone remembers, I've done multiple stories on this. New York Times comes out with a bombshell article. That bombshell article showing, and I need to go back, I always need to go back a little bit just so people who don't follow this channel, if they just happen to stumble upon this video and be like, what the hell is this guy talking about? I need to explain a little bit of what I'm talking about. New York Times comes out with a bombshell article. That bombshell article essentially says Harry Reid had instigated a program that was studying UFOs. Bombshell. Utter bombshell. UFO researchers have been screaming this for the past 50, 60 years, and they've been, these fringe guys, these guys out there talking about this nonsense about stuff in the fucking sky. We know that human beings are the only things in this entire universe. Now, honestly, I would think that would be a religious belief, seeing as life can grow in all sorts of crevices, even volcanic craters and such. But they hold on to that religious belief. And with that religious belief, the guys are saying, in the same way that we explore space, there could be something that is thousands of years ahead of us that are doing the same. And not just doing the same, are a hell of a lot better at it than we are. But they were considered fringe. Now, the New York Times comes up with this article. And it wasn't just the New York Times. It was like the New York Times, Politico, it was several. All at once. Studying aliens. Studying UFOs. Now, immediately, once this comes out, Lou Elizondo, the guy who I'm going to show you to, quits his post at this organization. And after quitting his post at the organization, goes to work for Tom DeLonge. A bunch of papers start to get released showing craft, but not just showing craft, giving military personnel to the public and to the press to be questioned and interrogated. Tom DeLonge had a train wreck of an interview with Joe Rogan. That interview was horrendous. It was one of those, you must understand, Tom DeLonge has this bad alien theory. And so some of the stuff he would say will be in that part of the bad alien theory. And then it's added on to the secondary thing of, I know shit that the public doesn't know. Which is always annoying. It's always a pain in the ass to hear people talk that way. But he talks that way. And does it with this thing of almost certainty, which makes the onlooker look at him as, this guy has fucking lost it. It was a train wreck of an interview. And Joe Rogan asked him questions that I don't necessarily think were all that unfair. I think anybody who's looking at that, who's somewhat skeptical of what's being said here, asks questions in that way. That being said, the people he had were real. All throughout the Podesta leaks, one of the things that people don't talk about in the Podesta leaks was Tom fucking DeLonge. And that's the way that the UFO researchers knew that Tom DeLonge had his bona fides. He was strewn throughout the Podesta leaks. not just throughout the Podesta leaks, though. Well, let's move forward. He starts Academy to the Stars. Lou Elizondo, Hal Puthoff, all of these big shots, all of these big names, with a bunch of spooks behind them, start coming out and talking to the public. They have the real stuff. They have videos. They have tapes. Not just tapes and not just people. They have metrics, data. They have scientific research that the government was doing into like warp drive and visibility and all of these weird sciences. And not just that, materials. They have all of the stuff that they were able to essentially move from what was considered, you could say, the black world to this organization. And this organization has started to leak it. And apparently those leaks are going to get bigger. Bombshell. That's a fucking bombshell. UFO researchers have been talking about this for years. And right now, it's mainstream. It has to be mainstream. This shit is being talked about in the mainstream media as being legit. Overnight. Done. Confirmation. You may have skeptics, but at this point, the skeptics are on the outskirts. You have all of these military personnel and scientists coming out saying, yes, this is real. Yes, we've been studying this for God knows how long. Yes, yes, yes. All of those things are yes. All of those things are yes. Now, and I'm making a point here. I'm building up a point. This is Luis Elizondo. I want you to know who I'm talking about. And this guy gets more radical as it goes on. Meaning, I think this took place like 2 months ago. You listen to his stuff now, he's talking about fucking aliens. It's fucking amazing. But this is Luis Elizondo.
So what did you find?
Well, we found a lot. I think it's probably been a little bit mischaracterized in some of the social media you see and what people put out, because a lot of times when we don't have a lot of information, we tend to fill in those gaps with what we think is logical. And there's still, by the way, a lot we really don't know. I think what's important is that we have identified some very, very interesting anomalous type of aircraft. Let's call them aircraft. Things that don't have any obvious flight surfaces, any obvious forms of propulsion, and maneuvering in ways that include extreme maneuverability beyond, I would submit, the healthy G-forces of a human or anything biological, hypersonic velocities, low observability, positive lift, again, seemingly in defying the laws of aerodynamics. So people
so
are talking.
Think, I mean, I know, but do you believe, when you get that Navy pilot saying what he said, do you think that was, a UFO? To obviously, I don't have any other word to use, or that, or something else?
Sure, that's a great question.
This is so weird to me. I find this utterly strange. Did you see her mannerisms? She's utterly freaked out by this question. Like, she's freaked out by this. Do you think this? I mean, is it a UFO? Like, she's terrified to even ask the question. Why does this freak people out? I don't get this. There are people in Texas. Right now, there are people in Texas. I'm not terrified to go to Texas. Oh, God, there are other people in Texas. Now, I get it. At some point, if you saw a dog for the first time, maybe you'd be terrified of a dog. Maybe that's just the human way of going about it. But fuck, why is this so... I don't know why this is so weird. That's all. It looks like the public or the society would be more... I guess more curious about this. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm the odd one. Let's keep going.
Keeping in mind, it's not just the pilot's testimony on an observation. Sure, when someone comes to you who's in charge of a multi-million-dollar weapon platform, who maintains a top-secret security clearance, who is paid and trusted by this country to go fight wars and to fly over cities with live munitions, and by the way, they're trained observers with millions of dollars invested in their training,
yep.
I would submit to you it's pretty compelling. But on top of that, it's not just the eyewitness testimony. It is actual electro-optical data and radar returns. It's also people like radar operators and air traffic controllers. So I think the discussion should be maybe a little bit broader than that. I think people are focusing just on 2 videos coming from a set of F-18s when really it's a lot more than that.
So recently, I guess it was in October, astronomers spotted what they say could be the first interstellar asteroid. You see it there, kind of that strange shape from beyond the solar system. What do you see when you look at that?
Well, Ms. Burnett, I have to admit to you, when I ran this program, I was fundamentally looking at, my colleagues looking at 2 things.
Yeah.
What is it and how does it work? We have deliberately stayed away from going down the rabbit hole of who's behind the wheel and what are their intentions.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people have a lot of feelings towards that and are very emotional about that. And what I wanted to do is to allow the data to speak for itself and then use that data to inform leadership, senior DoD leadership, about the potential threat that these type of technologies pose to national security, especially over any type of controlled airspace that we might have. So I'm not trying to be evasive in any way or vague with your answer, but
yeah. Well,
I think there's a lot of possibilities.
Look, and I know you think it's important. I know you think that the government didn't take the threat seriously enough. So let me just ask you point blank the question. Do you believe that life from somewhere else, while you ran this program, came here, visited, observed?
I will tell you unequivocally that through the observation, scientific methodologies that were applied to look at this phenomena, that these aircraft, we'll call them aircraft, are displaying characteristics that are not currently within the U.S. inventory, nor in any foreign inventory that we are aware of.
So I know you're being clear, but I mean, the answer is yes.
I can't speak on behalf of the government. Obviously, I'm not in the U.S. government anymore. My personal belief is that there is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
That's a bombshell. Understand, what he just said should be a bombshell. Like I don't understand how that plays on television and everyone goes and eats their Cheerios and the world just goes on as it is. That's a fucking bombshell! The guy just said they're goddamn aliens. Now maybe he didn't say they're goddamn aliens, but he's like, yes, I don't think we're alone. That's what he just said. Now, that doesn't mean that they're aliens. That doesn't necessarily mean, yes, there could be US or some other aircraft 20 years, ahead of us that we don't necessarily know about. So fair enough. But from the standpoint of the media and everything else, that's what he just said. Hillary Clinton, when she was running in the race, if you remember, Hillary Clinton said, I'm going to open the books. In the Podesta leaks, it was very clear when she essentially was trying to get certain, I think it was Jimmy Kimmel or one of them, to essentially ask her the question. And when the question was asked, they talked about it in emails, how happy and delighted they were that the question was asked and the way she answered it. She called them UAPs or something to that effect. It was her way of trying to rename it so she wouldn't be tarred by the term UFO. It's like taking away the people's association with one name and putting it onto something else. UFO is somewhat of a loaded term. People don't necessarily know the term UAP, even though it's the same thing. People give it a different cadence. Fair enough. Whatever she needs to do. But my point in this is, Tom DeLonge was working with Podesta. Hillary Clinton was working with Podesta. If Hillary Clinton would have been in the White House and they would have leaked this information, this would have given her, you could say, the pretense to say, I'm opening the books. I need to open the books. There is a public outcry. We need to know what this is. I am Hillary Clinton, President of the United States, and fuck it, we're opening the books. And this would have given her the ability to do what she wanted to do anyway. I'm making a point that these leaks were somewhat concerted. They were coming from one faction, you could say within the Pentagon or the government, that wanted this information out, with a candidate who was perfectly willing to release the information. That's exactly what I'm saying. Yes, you could say that's conspiracy theory, but I would say it's a damn good one considering that both Podesta and Clinton were connected in the same way. Or you could say the rock star and Clinton were connected through the same person. That person, by the way, have said on multiple occasions he wanted to open the books. So, from that, she loses. We get Trump. Now, Trump is in office. This information is not just CNN. This is Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, the Young Turks, Washington Post, New York Times, all across the media spectrum. This came out. Does the president get briefed? Does the president of the United States get briefed? Now, I'm of the belief that the president of the United States knows about this shit from the get-go. From day one, they sit the president down and say, Mr. President, here's a bunch of shit that's taking place right now. If you do anything to this, all of this would happen. The world will fall apart. So you need to keep all of this shit in place. Otherwise, if that's not the way it is, then there's something else. Which means you end up in this idea that there's something else over the government apparatus. I don't have this idea that there's something else over the government apparatus. I don't know it. True. I think these guys are bought off. I think all of this can be explained based on these drives, on this kind of maximizing the individual's profit. But it's besides the point. Does the president get briefed? Now, if the president gets briefed, what does a reality show host take from this? What does he take from this? So all of this is put through the lens of the Department of Defense. That's a red flag for me right off the bat. That scares the shit out of me right off the bat. We're spending $1 trillion to hunt people down in caves. I mean, if you're being honest, that may be somewhat downplaying it, but that's literally what's taking place. How much would you spend if they said there was something that was invading our space that we don't know what it is? How much do you spend for something like that? But what does the president do for something like this? Does the president say, and is it a logical thing for the president, for a reality show host to say, we need a space force. We need to protect space. We don't know what those fucking things are. We need to protect space. That's what we need to do. And come up with an idea, a space force, and drop this into the press. Now, the catch to this is the press has no idea what the president is talking about. They have no idea why the president is asking for a space force. They have no idea why at all. And yet, it's there nonetheless. Space Force, an equal branch of the United States military protecting space. Is it all space? Is it space around the entire planet? Is it space just above the United States? I'm unclear on how much space that is, but they're protecting space. This breaks treaties, by the way. But again, has Donald Trump talked to Vladimir Putin about the aliens? You get my point. So I want to pivot from this, and this is a long pivot, to go into a separate area. The different type of civilization, or a paradigm shift from the standpoint of a civilization, and what that means from the standpoint of interaction between something like that. And this is a massive leap of the shark. This is not me saying this is a civilization that exists. I'm trying to make the point of the immense differences that can be from the standpoint of civilizations. Like, my wife and I are watching a video on China, and it says that in China, sometimes they would take kids and let them take a dump on the sidewalk. And that was the point where it was like, oh God, yeah, we don't need to go there. That's okay. We're okay. We're okay. We can just go around. Now, I don't say that because I'm saying that their culture is worse or anything else. I say that from the standpoint of, well, that's different. That's dramatically different. That's different in a way that offends my sensibilities. Now, if I grew up in that culture, in that society, it wouldn't be different at all. I might think nothing of it. I might be grossed out by it even if I lived in a society. Who the fuck knows? But to some degree, how I view it is going to be cut through the lens of the society to which I'm growing up in. Which means that even those differences, just from the standpoint of societies here, what the fuck could be out there? That question blows my mind. Let's take a look at, for the moment. Oh, by the way, and this is my whole point in doing this video. Grant Cameron say he has some new information that indeed Trump has been briefed about UFOs. Is it possible? I don't know. Now, does Grant Cameron have sources? Yes. Grant Cameron knew about the release like a year beforehand. But do I know that Grant Cameron or this particular source is right? I have no idea. I'm using this more so as a pivot to get into this particular point, which is taking far, far too long because I've spent too long in the lead up. But whatever. This guy. I want you to show you this guy. This is physicist Tom Campbell. Assume for the moment that a civilization visits us that has done the experiment that Tom Campbell wants to do. I'm going to let him tell you about this experiment, or at least part of it, and I'll explain the rest.
The continuing donations. A few days ago, we went over our 150,000 initial target, and now we're up to well over 170,000. That is terrific. The way Kickstarter works is that you either pass your minimum goal or you get nothing at all. So minimum goals are always set to be minimum, so that it's enough to do something significant, but not necessarily enough to do it all. So as the value goes up as you continue to donate, what it is we can get done is going up with it, and that's terrific. What we're trying to do here is something that's never been done before, never been attempted before. We're trying to explain quantum theory in terms of virtual reality.
We're trying to explain quantum theory from the standpoint of virtual reality. Tom Campbell wants to do an experiment to try to determine whether or not this world is indeed physical or whether this world is virtual. That's mind-blowing. He's using the double slit experiment and some of the quirks in a double slit experiment, essentially interrogating the quirks in the experiment to figure out how far they go, to try to make this clear delineation between, is this solid or is this something else? And if this is something else, which his contention is virtual, it's a paradigm shift. Assume for the moment you're on a planet that had that paradigm shift 1,000 years in advance, or 1,000 years prior. What does that society look like? What if the society, for the some part, is able to make a digital imprint of your consciousness and have that digital imprint imposed into body after body after body, essentially becoming immortal? And assume for the moment that this particular society also gets involved with this psi stuff, because Tom Campbell makes the contention that all of the psi phenomena that people experience is attributable to essentially that particular quirk in our reality. I'm trying to make the point that how weird that society would look to us, how weird we would look to that particular society. All of this stuff starts to come up in regards to, I don't know how you interrogate this thing of, there's something in the sky, without asking the question, what's controlling the thing that's in the sky? And if these guys are saying it's not us, and if mainstream media is saying it's not us, meaning the mainstream thought is it's not us, how could the next question be, what is it? What is it? What is it? Now he's trying to make this question of, is it a threat? I think if the Department of Defense is looking at it, Department of Defense is looking at it as a threat. It's the Department of Defense. So, to a hammer, the entire world looks like a nail. Well, you're turning that hammer to the rest of the universe. So, I'm fascinated by this. I am stuck with this thing of, has the President of the United States been briefed? And is Space Force a response to the President of the United States being briefed about aliens? I love it. I don't know if Grant Cameron's source is legit or not. I have no idea. I do know Space Force is really fucking weird. And coming out with that out of the blue is a little bizarre. But it's not bizarre in the context of the president being briefed by something that he saw on Fox News. Let's say he saw something on Tucker Carlson, and then after a while he's like, we need Space Force, we need Space Force. Or somebody seeing something on Fox News or one of these newspapers saying something to the president, and all of a sudden the president looks into it and, oh my God, the things in our skies. The things in our skies, we need to protect our skies. We need a Space Force. We need a Space Force. We need to punch aliens in the face. That's what we need to do. I'm Donald Trump. So, yeah. Protecting empty space from the unknown. Michael Parks. Right. Protecting empty space from the unknown. Exactly. Look, the thing that freaks me out about the Space Force modeled after the movie Spaceballs. Dude, look, this is funny, but this is terrifying. I don't think you guys realize how terrifying this is. Whether or not there's a reality to it or not, it doesn't matter. Like, the reality that's being created is the one that matters the most in this case. What is the reality that's being created? And who knows what's real in the world that we have from the standpoint of political spin? A lot of what I do is decoding the spin that these guys use when they're talking about a particular story. That guy's a terrorist. Well, what do you mean that guy's a terrorist? I mean, you're the one that's over there killing him. Is he really a terrorist if you're the one that's over there killing him? This language, this Orwellian way that we use language where honesty is this kind of liability because the shit that you want to do is somewhat grisly, and that people of good conscience can look at it and call it such if they understood the reality of what was taking place. How does that jive with fucking aliens? Do you see what I mean? How do I know in this particular reality that what is being reported is real? How do I know that? How do I know that? It could be true. It could be false. It could be some part true, some part false. How do I know? You're stuck into this situation where it's like reality to some degree. It's like, where's the floor? I mean, it's an odd place to be. Just from the standpoint of politics. To some degree for politics, you at the very least have people who were there, who can talk to, who you have some semblance of a similar perspective of the world with. We can try to piece around your surroundings. But in situations like this, you're stuck with this thing of, this is what's being released. Great. Is it true or not? Is it possible that we have an aircraft that's 20 or 30 years in advance? Is it possible that the moment that... Look, I consider some of this stuff like chess. The difference between a person who's 2,000 in chess versus 2,200. It's a big fucking difference. Even though it doesn't seem that much when you're looking at the ratings part. Or let me say 2,200 and 2,300. Let's say it that way. There's something that changes. There's a fundamental shift in the way the person thinks about the game at a certain point. There's a paradigm shift. They don't think about the game in the same way. I say this because as my skill level got pretty high, I realized there's certain players at a certain level I could stay with, even though my rating was less than theirs. At a certain other level, off the roof, off the table. They played differently. It was just a different way of playing the game. Grandmasters thought about the game in a different way. Same pieces, same rules, different way of thinking about the game. I consider technology may be something similar. It could be very possible that somebody or someone figured something out that eludes, let's say, some other branch of science and can exploit that in a way that makes it look like it's far, far ahead in regards to technology, but it's kind of just a quirk of thinking to get you to that point. If that was true, you would see technology that would look like fucking wizardry, but would just be a quirk in the thinking that the person was engaged in. It doesn't necessarily shock me that there may be some craft or something that's in some kind of black project that nobody knows about that they may be exploiting in order to get certain military technology out. That does not necessarily blow my mind. There's this part of me, this lefty, hippie, new agey, hopeful, dwindling, and yet somewhat resilient part of me that is still standing on the building with no shirt on, waving a sign saying, "Welcome, Space Brother." So it's just a weird reality to be in. That's all. It's you're always stuck in this thing where political language is being used for everything that comes out, and that honesty is a problem in the process, because honesty is not necessarily something that's all that valued, or at the very least is problematic in politics. And you're stuck with that. And it's like, all right, now that you know that everyone is liars, figure this shit out. Great. Okay, what are the things that person want? What are the things that person want? And then you're stuck with, what are the incentives for everybody in this situation? Which turns human behavior into this kind of gross mechanical thing. But the fact is, the gross mechanical thing is the thing that's often right. And all things being equal, there will be times that you will be wrong from the standpoint of human behavior being a gross mechanical thing. But they've been few and far between. So, adding aliens into this is just fucking weird. Or at very least, let's say UFOs into this. But I'm wondering if the president has been briefed. So, I'm going to end this here. I'm not going to keep this going. Look at our own weird primitive attempts at space exploration, communication, and how they have advanced. Yeah. Think of, for the moment, the caveman. And the caveman is talking to another caveman. And they're like, it's impossible to talk to somebody further than a mile away. Sound waves don't carry that long. However you do, I can't get my voice that loud. Nobody could ever do that. And say for the moment somebody say, hey, if you put two chords together, you can talk. Oh, great, we can do that. Then someone else says, it's impossible to talk without these chords. Like, at some point, people hit their head against this thing of impossibility to some degree as a point of view. And oftentimes you'll be surprised at what you can accomplish. So, what happened to the super chats? Krillin87. So, super chat is now going to be an alternative super chat click. They've taken down the monetization on this channel, on the entirety of this channel. They said they did some kind of review, and somewhat of a on the moment, they just demonetized the entirety of a channel, saying that there were violations of some sort. My channel has no copyright violations. My channel is in good community standing. Anytime that I've played a video of somebody else, they've just taken the money and gave to that particular person. And I have no issue with that at all. At other times, I've removed the video that they wanted me to remove, or removed the section of the video. No copyright strikes. And they said, we've shut down your video. No room for appeal, no room for anything. They just shut it down. And you no longer have the capacity to even communicate us on this. So yeah, all monetization on the video shut down. So any super chats that will be given will have to be given through the link description box. It allows to give through like PayPal. Once you give, it gives this like Star Trek thing that little comes up, and it gives a thank you and all this other stuff. The Star Trek stuff is pretty badass. We should all move to Vimeo. The problem with Vimeo is it's expensive. It's expensive. After that communist segment, laughing my ass off, who are the fascists? What do you mean after that communist segment? I haven't had a communist segment. Never had no communist segment. I'm not in anything. I'm not a communist in anything. I'm not in anything. And I say that. Look, I don't like the labels. The moment that you attach yourself to a label, you're stuck defending that particular label, even in times when you shouldn't defend that fucking label. I've heard people stand by and defend positions that were some way indefensible because they had affiliated themselves with with a particular ideology. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Anti-capitalism, bad aspects for sure. I am anti-capitalist. I'll say it that way, but that's more so a critique on the way we've organized ourselves. And look, I would make the case that yeah, to some degree, if your society has organized itself in a way where you are destroying the habitable space to which it dwells, meaning you're killing life on this planet, then you're wrong. Then you're wrong. Your arrangement is wrong. Now, it's not wrong from this thing of it's wrong from the perspective of if life is the point. If to any degree life is the point, then you're wrong. You've missed the boat. You're killing yourselves, or we're killing ourselves. I get a lot of weird arguments for just pointing something out. You said a lot of weird arguments. Do you remember the Weird Owl video fat parody? Yes, I do. Yes, I do, Krillin. Yes, I do. Newspeak for fascists is empathy challenged mercantilists. Empathy challenged mercantilists. I mean, come on. What? I don't understand why people are shocked that our system turns out the way it turns out. Like, if your job is, you're in a society that says the more you make, the better you are. You get more access to goods and services. You, for the most part, are distinguished among others, meaning there's a certain amount of specialness that's attached to you. Media thinks that whatever you say is interesting, meaning this guy has several $1 billion. Let's hear what he has to say. I think we should go to the moon. Yeah, he thinks we should go to the moon. Man, that's really interesting and hot. It's amazing. But they do it. You know, the Kardashians become famous. For God knows why. Paris Hilton becomes famous. Again, for God knows why. No clue. They got a lot of money. That's it. That's kind of weird. And yet, that's what takes place. Now, the converse is also true. Just almost by distinction of opposite. The less you have, the less access you have to the goods and services that you need. And again, you get another social stigma, and not necessarily a good one. Now, the fact is, though, that social stigma that you get, for the most part, is just remedied by having access to the things that you need. Meaning, if your society had a way to make sure that those people at the bottom weren't necessarily at the bottom, then that social stigma wouldn't exist. Then it's a secondary thing of, if those people had access to the things that they needed, maybe crime and all this other stuff wouldn't be part of the issue. Maybe them using opioids in the way that they use opioids wouldn't be an issue. I'm saying maybe if you didn't have the stressors that are built into your society where you're creating this pressure cooker, you understand work is not the point of life. I don't understand how people got that in their heads. I suppose they got in their heads from this almost like slave-like mentality where you have the bosses and then you have everybody else, and they essentially hoard all of this money and act as if there's some kind of deficit or if there's some kind of scarcity. Yeah, there's no such thing as scarcity in this case. To capitalize on Western society's runaway chakra fetishes. Chakra fetishes. This is like the socialists telling Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez that she isn't socialist enough. You ain't fat. You ain't nothing. You ain't fat. You ain't nothing. Look, the World Socialist website, that part's a little weird to me. Because, look, I agree with him that she's a classic socialist. Fair enough. I mean, she's a classic Democrat. Yes. Yes. Would Jeremy Corbyn fit their definition of socialist? I'm curious on what they would consider to be, yes, this guy is what we consider to be a socialist. I just need to have a mental image of what they mean. I don't know about you, but that work mentality was put on me by my parents. Me too. Well, it's not just your parents. No, it's not just your parents. Think about our society. Like, and think about the society that came before, and the one that came before, and the one that came before. Like, it makes sense to some degree. If you're in a society where there's lack and there's not enough, and you need to build up your resources and everything else, and so yeah, people need to work in order to make sure that the society has enough to do what it needs to do. No issue. Zero issue. My issue here is that oftentimes throughout history you had a situation where one class maintained a large percentage of the wealth when everyone else did not. And it was a forced scarcity. Now this became more pronounced kind of as you get to this kind of industrial age. And I'm more so talking about now, where you have technology that has capacity to get rid of suffering. I mean, at this point, poverty is a choice. The question becomes, you had enough wealth to get rid of poverty 7 times over. Just last year alone. Most people don't get the scale of wealth that has been accrued. You're talking about trillions of dollars that has been amassed. This idea that the rest of the world is starving in many respects, living off $2 a day, is insanity. Why on earth? You had a pizza delivered and one guy takes 99 slices. What the fuck? We keep the lights on. We are the ones who make this world work. We're the essential quantity in this world. And yet the essential quality in this world has allowed a small minority to take most of the resources. I'm saying that's lunacy. There is no social contract that should allow something like that to take place. And the 99% should in no way. It's weird to me that a group of people would allow it. That's all. It's utterly bizarre to me. The idea that you would craft a system that would allow one person to end up with $150 billion when there are other people shitting on the streets in California is, I would say, that by itself is an indictment of the system. That shows that the system doesn't work. There is no system in the world where the resources, even though the majority of the people on the planet are the ones that do the majority of the labor on the planet, one small 1% gets to hold on to the overwhelming majority of the resources. I'm saying that's fucking nonsense. It's fucking nonsense. It should never happen. It should never happen. And the idea that the 99% allow it, and you have some stupid idiots that would argue for the 1%. They will be out there cheerleaders for the people who are out there exploiting them. It's fucking amazing. It's absolutely fucking amazing. Yeah. You know, the wild part about it is the people who are arguing for capitalism, they never knew anything else. It was almost like they were baptized as children and grew up in a religion. And they go on preaching the religion as if they made a conscious choice for the religion. All these people who are running around as wage slaves are in the same situation. They are preaching a religion for something that they were born into, grew up in, never knew an alternative for anything else, and for the most part, lived and died within that particular system. There's some people who could say, yes, the Soviet Union was an alternative system, and oh my God, it was an authoritarian hellscape. That is true, but it doesn't necessarily mean that this is the only system or that people should necessarily try to move forward into other things. Doesn't mean that at all. Damn sure it doesn't mean that we can't necessarily have better wages and living standards and everything else. I don't give a shit what you want to call it. I'm saying that we can choose how we are arranged. It's not a finite thing of this is capitalism, this is communism, this is socialism. I don't care what the label. I don't care what you call it. What is it doing? What is its purpose? If you need to deal with the issue of healthcare, that's a technical question. How do you make sure people get healthcare? I would say you can do that for your entirety of your system. I would also say that if you're in a system where you're giving $155 billion of wealth to one man, while the people in his company are given little devices where they're buzzed, where they have a certain amount of times where they need to get back and forth to the bathroom, where you have an ambulance outside where people faint because they can't necessarily keep up the workload. and they're paid shit and piss. $155 billion. Your system is broken, and that system needs to be rearranged. Candidates don't necessarily like to deal with this thing of the system itself. They're always terrified of hitting the hot button issue of the system itself, because ultimately, you're gonna have to hit it. Like for whatever dicking around with the sides of it, ultimately you hit your head upon this one main idea of, if we keep things as they are, regardless of a social program here or there that we may add, they're going to continue to always get more, and everyone else is going to continue to always get less, unless we're willing to change some aspect or plank of this particular system. Just saying. It needs to change. If you're giving one man $150 billion, your system is broken. It's utterly broken. I mean, think about it. Wesley Walker, what's happening, my man? If you can't, as a nation state, as a city or state or government, what is your job? Like honestly, what is your job? Just a basic job. What would be in the job description of the state? If you pay taxes, you hard fucking work, you spend 50, 60 hours of your week scratching for somebody else, and they give you a share of the wealth that they get, keeping a certain amount of surplus labor. And you take part of that scratch, probably not paid enough, but you take part of it, and you give to the government. What do you ask in return for the money that you're giving to the government? Right? I mean, what do you want to get out of that deal? That is not just giving money for shits and giggles. You're giving that money because you want to have a government, a functional working government. You give a part of that to the federal, you give part to the state. What are the basic requirements that you require in this arrangement? Wouldn't one of those requirements be clean water? I want to have clean water. I want to have streets without potholes. There's certain things I want in return for the money that I'm giving. In some states, clean water. They couldn't get clean water. I mean, in Chicago, they're talking about initiatives for clean water. Why do you have to have initiatives for this? Shouldn't this just be the basic thing that your city or state or government provide? Now, if I'm asking these questions of how do you provide X or how do you provide Y, I look at these things as technical questions. I don't look at these things through an ideological lens. A technical question: how do you provide health care to all of the people in your society? How do I make sure the water is clean? How do I make sure there are less potholes? Now, some of these things would run roughshod over this idea of this capitalistic enterprise. This is kind of what I mean when I say I'm not anything. But how I talk about this often ends up being anti-capitalist, because my job in this is not to maximize somebody else's profit. I just want to know what's the best way to make a system work. Yeah. I mean, shit, man. I guess the point is, government should work. And you need to fund it to the degree that it needs to be funded for it to work. If that means that a certain percentage of the population pays more because that certain percentage has benefited magnificently off the way the system is, congratulations, by the way, you benefit magnificently, then they pay more. It's what it is. Problem is, you have politicians who have this situation where, in order to get elected, they get cash. And the taxes would need to be raised on the people who are just so happen to giving them cash, which means that they are less interested in raising taxes. That's what it boils down to. That is literally what it boils down to. That's funny. All right, I'm gonna end this. I'm just running my mouth. Yeah, I'm just running my mouth. There are no ideals. I do a pariah. I think at one point there might have been this kind of honor among thieves. But when the Soviet Union fell, that was it. Bill Clinton took office. I don't know what was the jumping point. I'm an amp. Jamal, if you raise taxes, you cause them to flee. Then, then they leave. But if they leave, they're not going to do a business in the United States. You honestly believe that between doing business in the United States and dealing with whatever regulations that the United States is putting out, they would flee? Yeah, I doubt it. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, I think that's overrated. And not just I think it's overrated. If I'm not mistaken, I've even seen research to say it was overrated. And the government is more carrots and sticks in their toolbox than these guys are just going to flee. I agree with you in two ways. That for the most part, capital at this point is global. So it's not necessarily these companies are localized into the United States. So that part I agree. I disagree that this thing of raising taxes would be this immediate fleeing from the United States. No, I don't agree from that one. I mean, especially if you start making it hard for them to do business in the United States. So at the end of the day, they still want to make their profits. And making a little bit less in their profits, they'll deal. If you raise taxes, the terrorists win. I know that. I love that. But look, I do agree with you on this. That your argument is not completely wrong. At least I don't think it's completely wrong. I just think it's overblown. That's all. And by the way, I don't have this idea that your country needs to be bound to capital in this way. I would do two things. Support worker co-ops. That would be a big thing. I would support a Green New Deal, which means I would dump a ton of money into this idea of energy independence for the houses in the country itself. But again, how I would run this would be, I would run this in a way that would try to empower worker cooperatives. That's what I would try to empower. I would try to empower, solar energy and so forth, things that were localized in the United States itself. I would try to grow jobs that are owned by people themselves, not necessarily corporate interests. And I would also try to empower those things or create organizations to try to spur those things, even a national bank. I would do this differently. And especially if there's like a global collapse. God. If Donald Trump is undoing even the tepid regulation that Obama put in office after Dodd-Frank, meaning that in the same way there was a collapse the first time around, there may very well be a collapse the second time around. The question is, who's going to be in office if and when that happens? Jesus Christ. Like, we are in a weird fucking time, man. Get rid of CEOs being paid in stocks. Put transaction tax on high-frequency trading, yes. Restore Glass-Steagall, yes. Market volatility in state banks and worker quality, yes. Yes, I didn't go away, my baby. All of that. Yes. I'm saying there are ways to do this. The difference is, it's a way of thinking. Am I working in the benefit of the interest of the public itself, or am I working in the benefit of the interest of corporations? I don't know if you can have a straight turn to socialism in the standpoint of the way it's kind of revolution. You could, maybe. But when I think of the French Revolution and I think of the Russian Revolution, both of them had the highest ideals, and they ended up in kind of rough places or bad places. But can you have a political changeover where you win a wakefulness in the public itself? Like, part of the public's problem is the public is not necessarily, or the public is taught certain things. And it's certain things that propagate the way the system is today. It's a way of, it's like insulating the system in order to maintain it. It's an interesting way that it works. And what I think it this way, because I think, what would the public need to believe in order for the public to believe that the world can be different? I start thinking from that standpoint. What should the public believe for the public to be more woke? Like, if classes dealt with, hey, I would add meditation. My wife thinks I'm nuts on this. But propaganda, spotting propaganda, meaning in media, if your kids were in classes that were able to spot that. What if your kids were in classes dealing with issues of international studies starting with a young age? Meaning, in first and second grade, they're introduced to various cultures around the globe and even intermingled with cultures from around the globe. I'm talking about this cultural immersion that allows a certain amount of interconnectedness between the people around the planet. There are different ways for us to be organized to try to downplay or to really lessen this kind of opposition that we have to one another. I don't know. This world can be different. I just hate the way this fucking world is organized. Here's how we do revolution. You would push reforms as far as the system would go, as far as the elites would endure, and then you push for more when the elites resist. You tell the people that's the only way. You know what's wild about that? What would have happened if Obama would have did that? Like, if I look at Sanders, and I look at Sanders and Trump, and I came to a realization that what the media are telling you that the limit is not the limit. It's contrived. It's just what they say it is. Like, mainstream media is just, and I know this is, some people will say, no shit Sherlock, but this was something that I had to learn. And whether you realize it or not, other people also need to learn that. They don't know that. The media is just a perspective. It's when they're saying, hey, the limit is this, you can only go to this point, you can't go beyond this point. They don't know what they're talking about. This is them spitballing and making shit up. They have a certain perspective. Chuck Todd is standing there because somebody hired Chuck Todd to stand there. If Chuck Todd had a different cadence and opinion and belief system, Chuck Todd would not be standing there in that spot. Chuck Todd can say whatever Chuck Todd wants to say, providing Chuck Todd remains Chuck Todd. If Chuck Todd moves beyond the boundaries by which Chuck Todd was hired, Chuck Todd will be replaced by somebody else who will be the new Chuck Todd. This is your media platform. And MSNBC, CNN, all of them, it's the same. They can say whatever they want, but the person who hired them knew exactly what they were going to say when they were put in that spot. When they tell you, oh yeah, we have our own opinions, they do. They were put there because they had that specific opinion. Yeah, I forgot the opinion. I forgot where I was going. But, damn it, I forgot where I was going. God damn it. Oh, I think I said Obama, if Obama did it. And he pushed and pushed. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I know what I was saying. That for the most part, what media is talking about here is nonsense. When they make their protestations that this person can't say this and this person can't say that, they're full of it. Donald Trump was saying what Donald Trump wanted to say. Grab him by the pussy, all that stuff. They voted for him. They still won. The guy had a video talking about grabbing somebody by the pussy, talking about a fucking assault. He still won. Bernie Sanders. Oh, you can't call yourself a socialist. You can't talk about the socialist stuff. That stuff is off the reservation, is off the table. You can't say it. Blah, 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 blah. He caught him goddamn fire. Now, I would agree that there is there's such a thing as a political mood. Fair enough. But oftentimes, these guys have a particular ideology. You have a bunch of millionaires on TV essentially telling you what you should be thinking. That's mainstream media. I am a random guy on YouTube, not necessarily telling you what you should be thinking, but at the very least telling you what I think. Mainstream media, however, when you deviate, they call you a conspiracy theorist. How dare you say something that goes against our narrative? The CNN reporter sniffing a book bag that was supposed to contain some kind of lethal poison is odorless. She didn't know that. And she's sniffing a book bag. Essentially a theatrical piece. The Syrian thing. The gas attack that never took place. The bombings. In which case they rah-rah the president, even when he's doing an illegal missile strike. This is the objective point of view, apparently. Yeah. It's great. I appreciate that. You may be some random guy, but I trust you more than some asshole that's feeding me shit. Pat Cook, MSNBC, will speculate on stuff you don't care about much, so you don't have to. Right. I love that. We'll speculate on shit, so you don't have to. Darren the Levy, Jamal, would you go live in space if there was a colonization program? Yes. Unequivocally, yes. Without a hedge, unequivocally, absolutely, yes. Are the aliens just watching or laughing, or are they in on it? Laughing. Who knows if anything lasts? Who knows if they have humor? Who knows if they will even understand to some degree our humor? Who knows? This shit becomes a fucking... Look, the one thing that's interesting to me is this thing of awareness. What does it mean to be aware? Like, say you have a kid or a dog. You're more fortunate if you have the dog, I would argue. But if you have a kid or a dog, and you watch that kid or dog, is there anything happening in that moment when you're watching that kid or dog? Like, is there something that's there or something that's distinct just from having awareness on it? The answer is yes. Now, in the double slit experiment, this experiment that Tom Campbell is doing, you shoot a solid electron. That electron goes through two slits. It has to go through one or the other, right? I mean, if this is a physical world, it goes through one or the other. Well, not so much. If you're not watching, it goes through both. If you look at the slit, it goes through one or the other. Meaning the very act of looking at it made a choice. Something made a choice. But the very act of looking at it, conscious being bared upon this thing, gave a different result. That's fucking fascinating. Now, this thing of is something watching, is something looking. I'm fascinated by that for some reason. Because what does that mean? Like, we assume that waking consciousness is all there is. That's an assumption. We assume that our consciousness is purely in our heads. Again, that's an assumption. All those things are assumptions. We assume that this is a physical world. That's an assumption. That assumption, to some degree, is somewhat undermined even by the physics itself. But is that electron really solid? Right. Or is it a combination of strings and a Planck time? Fair enough. But photon, electron, I mean, in normal circumstances, it chooses a side. The point I'm making here is, and I think they've done this experiment with larger particles, but either way, I get your point. But at that point, you get into this thing of particles themselves, and it's anything real. But I get your point. Solid matter has a thing where decoherence is broken, in which case it becomes an actual thing in our reality, space-time. Fair enough. But still, for all intents and purposes, the electron usually makes a choice. It's still your consciousness, your intention, making a difference with regards to whether or not it goes through one or it goes through both. And the idea of it going through both in and of itself is fucking amazing. It's fucking amazing. Schrodinger's cat stuff. Yes, it is. It is. It absolutely is. You put a cat in a box with a poison, and if you don't look, it has this kind of atomic switch where it's randomized in which the time it goes off, meaning that you don't necessarily know whether the cat is dead or alive, because you know it's going to go off, but you don't know when it's going to go off. It can go off immediately, it can go off in an hour. Is the cat dead or alive? And the point is the cat is both. If nobody else is aware in that scenario, then it's both. The cat is dead and alive at the same time. This is the double slit experiment. I don't know if it applies to that because the cat may be considered awareness. One of the experiments that Tom Campbell wanted to apply was whether or not animal awareness applies as awareness. Meaning, if a cat was looking at it, then it's not dead or alive because the cat wouldn't be considered a reality, or the cat would be considered a consciousness in the puzzle or in an experiment. Electrons are really evertrons and adapt as necessary. The cat is the DNC. They're dead to voters but alive to the media. Pat Cook. They're only alive to the media because it's the only thing that's there for them to kiss up to. If it was something else, it would be something else they'd be kissing up to. We don't ask the question, who or what is I? No, we don't, do we? That's a fucking fascinating thing. I think people take it for granted that I is this thing that gets up in the morning, that's backaches, knees hurt, that does the news like a man. That annoys his wife at times. That is epic at times, petty at others. Yeah, we don't ask what's right. The media is nothing more than propaganda. Bond you, dude. See, here's the thing. I think at one point those things started off as real. Like, it's almost like it's like an undermining of those particular institutions. But the undermining happens because of the incentives, if that makes sense. It's like you start off with the best intentions. Media, government, best intentions. Now, and maybe there is no start. I guess you can make an argument that there is no real start. There's always just transitions from one thing to something else. But maybe there was a noble media at one point. Maybe there was a noble government at one point. Maybe. Who knows? Maybe they're just fairy tales. But you can understand that if you have this incentive structure where, well, think about it for yourself. You have a competitive environment, meaning Bob needs to put a knife in Tim in order to ascend to the presidency or wherever he needs to ascend to. And you put this all throughout your society in political affairs and in corporate and business affairs. And you overlay that with a value system. And that value system says you should be honest, you shouldn't lie, you should follow the law, you should be kind to your neighbors, you should be good Christians or good humanitarians, etc., etc., etc. But the problem with this is, in order to get ahead, ultimately, it's the opposite process. Meaning, the things that they give it as an overlay that is supposed to control the behavior in the other spheres are ultimately doomed to fail. Because as people get more precise and more, you can say, get better at what they're doing, it's like anything else, like technology. It gets better over time. Well, everything to some degree gets better over time, even if it's something that shouldn't get better over time. Well, you get more sharp in your affairs, especially as money starts to increase. What matters more starts to take over. So in this case, you have people who are giving more and more and more cash to the political process. What the people are willing to do goes further and further. So what was taking place maybe in the 50s, where you had some level of restraint in the way that people engage in their affairs, gets eroded year after year after year. So now you have a Republican House that was willing to deprive a Democratic president of a vote for his person. There was nothing wrong with the person. The president chose the most milquetoast person that he could find on planet Earth, Merrick Garland. And he stuck him up there to kind of embarrass the Republicans of, you're not even voting for a guy that one of you may even vote for yourself. No consequence. They put a knife in Merrick Garland. And they did so, stealing his seat. Now, this might have been unheard of at some point when you had some level of collegiality associated with the process, some statesman level of interactions between the parties. Done. Not so much. And to enshrine this behavior into law, not into law, but to enshrine this behavior to kind of persist forever on as this implicit rule, no consequence. No consequence. They stole a Supreme Court seat. And in stealing the Supreme Court seat, enshrining a Republican rule over the Supreme Court for God knows how long. And to make matters worse, are so weak, they're not even going to change their policies with regards to attacking the Supreme Court, which was what I would do. I don't mean attacking it like with the military. I mean either adding more members to that seat or giving them term limits or alter the Constitution in order to attack the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is a hostile actor. That's all I'm saying. They're not apolitical. We police often feign some control or claim on life itself. Scaredy cats. Scaredy cats. All right. Quantized inertia explains fuelless propulsion, impulse engines, and jump drives, and now cold fusion explains UFOs, inertia, universe generated UFO radio waves that slam into objects. What? Bob McIntyre, you are well beyond me on this one, buddy. I don't know if I know they have been trying to use some of the fusion stuff using I've seen experiments with them trying to use sound. I've seen experiments with them using it's a new reactor. They have plans of building a new fusion reactor, but they haven't been able to get energy out of it yet. UFOs have been observed opening portals. Pat Cook. Oh, that gets into Grant Cameron stuff. Grant Cameron gets into this idea of portals. He goes beyond my sandbox on that one. I go as far as the stone that I can see. Meaning, I've had OBEs. I've had odd experiences with stuff coming into my room. I've had bizarre experiences. So some of the stones, I can see that stone. I can get to that stone. I can totally see that stone. Other stones, he's off in the fucking weeds. But I don't say that in a bad way. I don't say that as a negative at all. It just means it's beyond my purview. It's beyond my purview. All right, I'm gonna end this. Rick, oh God, that's a. I don't want to even ask that question. I know the answer I want to give, but the answer is right or wrong depending on your value system. How about if Trump gets impeached, we go ahead and impeach all of his judicial appointees on the grounds that they were illegitimately appointed? Rick Bernados. So I guess look, the reason why I hate that question because it brings up my own my own sense of like, oh yes, I don't like Trump's Supreme Court nominees. I don't like this idea that they were able to steal 2 Supreme Court seats. I don't like this, not because I'm a Democrat, because I don't like it from the standpoint of them stealing 2 Supreme Court seats. It's this thing of the democratic process. But that being said, even if you got rid of Trump, you're just going to get Mike Pence. Or do you get Mike Pence? I don't like that. I don't like that. Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like it for a few reasons. A, I think it's going to start a goddamn civil war or something close. I think people are going to lose their shit. B, impeach him on what? There's no connection between Trump and Russia. That's the other part. And C, Clinton lost on all merits. Like, and I say that it's not that I want Trump elected, but I don't want Hillary Clinton elected either. Like, this was somewhat of a Hobbes choice to me. It was, oh gosh, either both of them are worse. But with one advantage, Clinton losing allows for a reshuffling of Democratic priority. Now, they didn't do that, or at the very least, they're trying to fight that. But to some degree, that is taking place. Slowly, you can say it's not fast enough, and I agree with that part. And the efforts of those who are trying to push back may be pushed away. And that's also true. But if Clinton had been elected, none of it would have been taking place, at least not to the degree that it's taking place now. So, let Trump finish this term, then arrest him as a civilian and put him in jail with Hillary and the cellmates. That's hilarious. Look, I don't have an issue if you go after him for, what is it called? Oh, God, the name is dropping from my head. But essentially getting money as a president. He's making money off of his assets as a businessman as a president. No issue with that part, because that doesn't involve the Russia nonsense. My issue is the Russia stuff. I don't like the Russia stuff. All right, I'm gonna end this. It's late. Emollients, that's it. Thank you. Emollients clause. All right, I keep saying I'm gonna end this. All right, guys, y'all have a good one. It's late. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon. Thanks, guys. And